Hi, everybody. I'm Ben, Cosmic Ben, and today I'm joined with the one and only Mr. Tim Fowers of Fowers Games.
Hey, happy to be here.
Nice. You do. Oh my God, you have a glorious goatee going on.
Yeah, I've always kept one. I when I was young, I had like jaw surgery to kind of just fix my teeth, and ever since then, I looked really young without a goatee. So ever since then, I've always grown a goatee because it just looks weird without it.
Yeah, I feel like I have like too much of a baby face to not have facial hair. I tried going with the
Yeah.
mustache once, and I hated every minute of it because everybody just made the same 3 or 4 different jokes at me for the whole day.
Yeah. I did 1 year for Halloween. I shaved the middle and did the horseshoe
Oh
mustache
yeah.
and dressed up as a prisoner with like the jumpsuit. And people said I look genuinely terrifying.
Oh my God. See, like when I did the mustache, it was because I was doing the voice of Jim Gordon for a podcast that takes
Mhm.
like movie scripts, canceled movie report, and I was playing the voice of Jim Gordon. So I was like, oh, I'll give myself the cop stash, and I'm just like, nobody's gonna see this. Who is this even for?
Well, it's your method actor, so it's important.
Exactly. A method acting
Yeah.
without making
Oh,
everybody's
you
life
can see my
agony.
mustache in the video for the original Burgle Bros Kickstarter video. I've still got it, and I've still got the stash for that. So I'm the security guard in that.
You can hear all this and much more stash facts in our TED Talk. Uh, oh, speaking of Burgle Bros, I actually have it right here in the
Yeah.
background. I actually wanted to talk about, with that as our
Sure.
segue, what got you from, coming from like a humble upbringing of like, like cattle farmers and to being a board game designer?
Um, I mean, it was a process. Actually, making just getting started making games. So I got a degree in actually in physics, but it's like applied physics. So it's not like real physics. It's like you might do physics at some point, and some programming. So I ended up in a job in medical imaging, and
Oh,
me and a buddy, we were hanging out all the time, sharing hobbies and whatnot, and he was a good programmer, and I was a bad programmer. Um, and he and we were playing together, and we kind of discovered like Settlers of Catan and like Puerto Rico Power Grid. Those were happening. This is like 2005.
mhm.
um, and we also discovered that he had actually worked in game development at one point, and we just figured out we wanted to make games. And so that was kind of the
Okay.
pivot point where we're like, and for a while it was just the concept of making video games. And so we made a game. If you look at now boarding, so you go like nowboarding.us. It was a little
Mhm.
indie game that we made and actually had some success. Like we actually, kind of were able to live off it for a little while. And then at a certain point, I was like, in our partnership, we were doing this like full time, and I do the sound effects and the art, and I would just help with all the other things. But the coding was my partner. So I just had extra time, and so I'm like, well, I'm gonna do a board game while we got time, and that became Walkstar, which was it. And we were in Kentucky at the time, so I went up to Protospiel, which is a prototype get together in Michigan, and I showed off Walkstar there. I got some interest from Mayfair, and that's kind of when the ball started rolling, and got me going into that. But at the same time, I had kind of a trajectory in the video game industry as well. I ended up at Amazon after the indie thing kind of spun out. I ended up at Amazon as a game designer in a game studio they had in Southern California. And I was there for like 3 years, but then, once, and I did paperback as a side gig while I was at Amazon. But eventually, when Burgle Bros hit in 2015, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to make games full time, so Burgle Bros was kind of the tipping point for the whole thing. So
Nice. Well, yeah, that's interesting. You sound like we have that in common that we start like at one point and we just like just spider outwards and just a little bit of everything, and then eventually wind up like, oh, this is what I want to do. Because
yeah,
like for me, like it's the same thing. Like I I started out doing just my normal day job and everything like that. I had like some college under my belt, and then I went from that to being like, oh, I'm gonna do stand up and make music and work in film and all this other stuff. And here I am making board game content, and it's just kind of wild how it all just kind of snowballs out
yeah.
of nowhere, and you wind up somewhere
Well,
completely
yeah, and
different.
you don't know the path you're going. I mean, like people say they want to make games, but like making games is a different process uh than consuming games. Like
Hmm.
it's and so I mentor a lot of people that kind of get into games, and on a certain level everyone's a game designer. It's like house rules and stuff. It's like you're always doing things to create games on your own or to modify them. Um, but the actual like discipline and the craft of like making a game is something I enjoy, and it's a really interesting challenge. But I have seen a lot of people just bounce off of it, where they're like, "Oh, this is, I have to play this how many times?"
Yeah, isn't it like something like I heard like it's like you have to play a game like up to like 1,000 times before it's like ready to like be finalized or something
Oh,
like that?
I mean, I don't know if anybody plays that much if it's not unless it's like a Magic
Like,
the Gathering or something.
oh my
But
God.
I mean, we did get lucky with Paperback Adventurers. My friend Jeff, who's a programmer, he helped on the design. He actually implemented all of Paperback Adventures digitally. So we have a fully functional version we're going to be launching of the digital version of Paperback Adventures, and we sent it to our backers, and they played about 1,000 games of
Nice.
digitally before we printed it. And so that helped us get the data that we needed, because it's a roguelike game, and so the term roguelike,
Oh, of course.
you're going to have a large pool of random elements, only a subset of which you're going to see in that particular game, and you have to just figure out how to roll with punches. And so it had had that kind of content, and so we were able to print it with a lot more confidence once we had that data from everybody. And it's the only time I've really been able to do that with the board game development. Other times, like, I mean, literally, I did the cooperative mode for Paperback, the original game. I just guessed it. I had never actually tested it. I was just like, I knew the game well. I knew the cadence of it, and I just kind of guessed some numbers with the cubes and like got lucky. Like, and people like how it turned out, and people talk about how close the game is, and I'm like, well, that's great.
That's honestly what happened to me when I was playing Fugitive the other night, because I started out just like, okay, maybe they're hiding here, maybe they're hiding here, and it's just like a ton of just like, oh my God, I gotta get lucky. And then like when I finally did, I was just like guessing all of them purely by chance at that point, and just like riding on the high of that.
Well, did you
Um,
win?
I did win. I finally win after I won after like 4 or 5 games of my friend creaming me as both the fugitive and the marshal. And I actually wanted to talk to you about that because
Yeah, yeah.
Fugitive and Burgle Bros all take place well in the same universe.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
sorry, go
I
ahead.
mean, it wasn't super intentional. I mean, Fugitive was those two were closely tied.
Hmm.
And like Paperback and Hardback are kind of tied together. And then we've kind of done some cameos in other games. But people, I mean, I actually had somebody after I made Burger Bros. They're kind of like, well, I want to know what happens after. When you get out of the building, I want to know what happens after that. And so I already had this idea of I wanted to have a chase, but Fugitive came together in like on like a flight where I was just kind of like half asleep, and I was just kind of like, and I just played the game called The Game.
Hmm.
It's a number climbing thing,
That's
and
the Pandasaurus one, right?
They've published it.
Yeah.
And and so they're just kind of floating around. But like Fugitive, as simple as it is, I mean, probably 60%, 70% of the game was like immediate. Like I was just like, okay, they're face down, they're trying to turn them face up. Like that was the whole thing. It was just a chase, And then it definitely took some help from some designer friends to get the way that the multi guesses work and the way that you guess without pointing. Like you just guess a number and then wherever it shows up. There's little things like that I had some friends really help me work out. The sprint system initially was like 1-to-1, and then I switched it to +1 or +2, and that gave enough variance that you couldn't you know
Easily guess.
yeah, you can guess it easily. So there's like these key moments that with that, because that's such a simple game, I can go back and be like, okay, this is where it started, and then we found this problem, and then we found this solution, and then we found this problem, and then we found this solution. And I have friends and stuff that have helped out and contributed different pieces of it. So, but yeah, that was kind of the process.
Yeah, Fugitive, oh my God, like with the sprint system, especially that was the bane of my existence for like the longest time. Is just like, because in my mind I was just like, okay, like my turn, which should have only taken like 2 minutes, was taking me like 5 or more minutes, or I'm
Gotta
just
run
like,
all the math.
okay, they maybe have one sprint or two sprints. What number could it possibly be? I've already guessed this one. Are they banking that I'm not going to guess it again?
Yeah,
And because when I was reading when I was going through the strategy guide or the rule book, it says like the fugitive benefits off the fact that the marshal won't bother to guess the same number twice. I was like,
yeah,
that's where you're wrong, and that's what like started like snowballing me into my victory. And
yeah, yeah.
you really did a good job of capturing like that. Sorry to interrupt. That
Yeah,
tense like cat and mouse chase in there with just simple guessing, face down, and bluffing, and like the deduction element is so fun.
well, thanks. Yeah, I mean I mean, I was a little worried when it first came out because I was just like, what other games have guessing as like a core mechanic? It's like Go Fish, Battleship.
Clue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, even
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, but just that whole thing is just like it hadn't been used a lot that I'd seen in kind of modern games, and so I was a little worried how it would be received. But and it's not for everybody, but yeah, it has found its audience, and um, there's even high level play. Like so, over the pandemic, we implemented a free version of Fugitive on playfugitive.com. Um, just kind of just to get let people play online, and it was a pandemic, so we wanted to do something nice. So it's a whole like Wordle version. Like it's just like you can just play it in the website. Um,
Hmm.
and it's been interesting to see kind of high level play of that. And we've actually played around with a couple of rule changes on the website, and again use that data to balance the game. So there is one rule change in the new second edition, which is on Backerkit right now.
It's on Backerkit,
Um,
everybody. There's the
yeah.
plug.
Backerkit.com. There's a link on the front page. Um, but in the new edition, the only rule change is when the fugitive can't play a hideout or doesn't play a hideout, they get to draw an additional card from the lowest deck that still has cards. So
Yeah.
it's usually not a number that's going to help you, but it will be like sprint fuel, and that I think has tilted it. So we watched that on the digital, on the website, and now they're a little more in line because the way we had to balance fugitive is when you first play the game and you don't know any of the deduction, you get smoked by the fugitive. So so it tilts one way, and the way I developed it is as you play a couple of games, it'll start to tilt the other way. Like as you figure out the marshal, so it goes from like 60% win for fugitive, and then to 60% win for marshal. And there's like an arc, right? But then when we had this online version, we had all this high level play happening, and we're like, we need to get this more into longer, to closer 50-50 if we can for these high level players. It still could work, right? I mean, even if it's
Hmm.
lopsided, it's an asymmetric game anyway. So it's like maybe it's just harder to be the fugitive. But we did do this rule change, and it seems like it's panned out, and it gives an interesting choice where you're like, okay, I'm just going to maybe maybe I'm just going to wait a turn to get an extra card because I have time right now. They're still catching up or they're a little bit lost. So I'm just not going to play hideout. So it becomes more of a user choice than some of the other solutions we had for it. So that's kind of like where, Fugitive. And then the other element we did is like to balance an asymmetry in skill is we use the shift system from Mind Management. And so whenever you lose a game, you get a shift card and it has 2 abilities. So it doesn't matter which side you play next, you're going to have some advantage. And those are designed to just mess with the mind games of both sides.
I like, I really like that element of the shift system implementation because it's kind of like getting like a booster pack almost in a game that you already own, which as someone who collects also card game stuff is I love opening a fresh pack of juicy little cards. And the other thing is like, like over the course of playing Fugitive, it definitely was skewed to where like, the Fugitive was like smoking me constantly. But then as I started to like develop my own like method of bluffing and figuring them out, like I started winning more as the marshal. And my friend Valerie, oh my goodness, we were playing actually the other night. We were playing on the Fugitive website, and she used like 7 or 8 cards to sprint to 42, and it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah,
It
the old
was
Evil Knievel.
wild.
You jump. We call it like jumping the canyon because
Mhm.
it's just like a massive sprint. I mean, there are some strategies too that can evolve. Like as the marshal, you can just start taking cards from the third pile exclusively,
Mhm.
and so you can try to actually block them out. So they
Yeah.
have to do a massive sprint to the end. So there's different strategies with that.
Hmm.
So
Well, actually, going back to the Backerkit, so your new
yeah,
game Run, I was looking at Danielle Strandring's, if I said her last name right,
yeah.
I want to say Stranding because of Death Stranding.
Standring.
Standring.
Oh,
Don't at me, Danielle.
Danielle.
Danielle, Danielle, I was watching her video of like because I've been looking at the Backer kit already, but just to see like what it looks like, I love it. And she's like, yeah, it's like Battleship, but like there's hidden movement involved in everything like that, and it looks so cool. And I love the little tiles. Those are bits that you use to like kind of plan out your movement. Am I right?
Yeah, well, actually, to do your movement. So
Oh, cool.
yeah. The core thing in Run is that so yeah, you're one person's hunting you. They're in a helicopter. They're trying to find you and non-lethally capture you. We've got like a flashbang and a net, and whatnot. Um, and they're trying to hunt you, but you have a limited budget. You're trying to get to these certain stashes which have goodies for you, and they have gadgets. But you're trying to get to these certain points and then to one of the exits. And so there's no given path you have to go in, but you have a budget of actions like move left, up, down, left, right, the 4 diagonals, and then there's these sprint directions. So sprint up, left, right, up, down, left, right, and basically those 12 actions are like your whole budget. So when you use one, you don't get to use it again ever. And
That's
so
really nice.
and then some of them, each of them will give some type of information to the dispatch is what it is in
Hmm.
this game. The dispatch a little bit of information about what you did, right? And so they're playing the game where they're marking all the places you could be. They've got a whole grid of like these. We have these little markers. They're going to be cubes in the final game, and they're like, okay, here's all the places he could be, and then they do like a search, like, okay, are you in this row? And so they're trying to narrow that down, and
Like
then
with like a trail of breadcrumbs, kind of, yeah, with the
yeah, and
cubes.
so it'll be interesting because sometimes it'll get really big, like when you really got them lost, and then sometimes you'll do the right type of scan or whatever, and all of a sudden it'll collapse into like, okay, he's in one of these 2 places, and so there's kind of this ebb and flow where you kind of disappear and then reappear. But with that game, so the tension is that you're going to run out of tiles, and you're like, oh, and so like late game can literally be a puzzle of like, okay, how can I use these remaining arrows that I have to still get done what I need to get done. Because if I run out, I lose. So it's high stakes already. And it puts tension. You don't have access to everything you want to do all the time. And then as they figure out what you've already used, their deduction gets even simpler because like, okay, I know he can't move left anymore because he's used all those. And so, okay, he's only going to move right. So I only have to mark those. And so you're running out of tools. And as they're kind of like, tightening the noose and all that. So, yeah, I mean, we do have a similar intergame rank system.
Mhm.
So it also compensates for. So in this one though, like as you win games as a particular side, you go up in rank, and you actually get a different kit of abilities. Actually, it generally makes the game a little bit harder for you because we actually put training wheels on the game at the beginning because there's a lot of things that you need to learn about the game, and so we give you tools that kind of do that part for you. A lot of the deduction and a lot of the marking of things. The lower levels of dispatch are there to teach you how that works, and then once you've won a couple of games, you lose those abilities, but they're not designed to be permanent. They're just designed to get you there. Like we had a big problem with with playtesting where people were like playing the dispatcher and they weren't marking the possibilities. They were just like, I think he's around here, más o menos. They're not really rigorous about bookkeeping, and
Yeah.
and very quickly you'll get lost because there's just a lot of moving parts, and so it's really critical for us to teach people. No, you mark everywhere he could be, even if it's a whole bunch of cubes, you mark it because that's how you can. You'd be surprised how you can catch back up if you just stick to those, and you kind of know like, okay, I know he wants to get to stashes at some point, so okay, those kind of become like little gravity wells. You're like, okay, he's probably going to be here at some point, and just those things where it's been a tricky one to be like, we know the game is balanced for like experienced players, but the onboarding was the bigger problem with Run. Is it has a different style of gameplay, so we created a rank system that's kind of the opposite of what the shift system is doing in Fugitive.
Yeah, I think that's really clever and useful. Like I think a lot more games should do something like that where there's like either like for example, like for like right over here behind me I have Root where they have like here's like us walking you through a turn of like
Yeah,
each faction so you understand their agency, why you want to do this and that and the other. And like or like in the Disney Sorcerer's Arena game, I think they have like a here you want to start with this and then use this and add this and this once you get comfortable. So like that rank system and Run
yeah,
sounds great. But man, you're like but with Run and Fugitive and all and like Sabotage as well. Just
yeah, yeah,
like games with like that, like man after my own heart. I love deduction in
yeah.
games, like because one of my first deductive games was Clue, and things like that. And I was like, I just need more deductive reasoning in games because like that's also why like some of my friends who are like medical professionals that I play a lot of board games with, deductive reasoning is a lot of their everyday, and they
Mm,
will just own at games like that. And so when I was telling them about like Fugitive and Run and everything like that, they're like, oh, that's for me. And and I was also going to ask you, um, there's a question I want to ask you, but first I also want to like just say like Ryan Goldsberry's art, I love it. It's
oh, it's
so
been
good.
fun.
Like
Yeah,
like the aesthetic of it is gorgeous. I also love the Burgle Bros 2 box. I love how it just like opens up,
yeah.
and I love that it looks like a skyscraper. I like the
Yeah, I mean, the Ryan has really developed this style. It goes back to that first game we made, now boarding the video game, which came
mhm,
out 2008. Um, it had very much this Saul Bass 1960s, and then we started to merge it with paperback was when we started to really define it as a style. And there's like Shag, and like there's a list of like particular artists, like if you think about Jetsons and Hanna-Barbera stuff,
mhm.
uh, where it's just like it's exaggerated in these certain ways. There's some like forced perspective, but there's just a lot of kind of like, and then the like mid-century influences. Um,
Mhm.
So, I mean, mostly I've let Ryan run with it. We worked out some art, mood boards and whatnot. But generally, I'm just like, you inspire me with like what you think. It's a lot of, and I just let him go. Like I just, from a very high level, I tell him like what I'm looking for, and he's able to just infuse these characters with just like a ton of personality. Like you
Yeah,
could
like
see,
it
like,
oozes personality
yeah,
from
they're
the
just like, oh,
box
this
to the
is the
components. I love
yeah,
it.
this is the person you're playing, and you're super cool, and you got it all figured out, um, and yeah, it's just been really fun to have those strong characters, and so it's really fun to go back to them and just be like, okay, let's double dip, let's bring in Sabotage, let's bring in the Burgle Bros, and then some super villains from Word Domination, which was Jeff Beck's game, and it's just fun to do that. Now they don't always have, a game doesn't always have to fit in the world, but I've also found that like fantasy and sci-fi, as much as I enjoy those things, I think that there's tons of that. I feel like a lot of times when you do a fantasy, it can just feel like a generic Tolkien world or a generic D&D world,
Yeah,
and when you do, future, it's like, well, okay, is it Star Wars or Star Trek?
yeah.
Right? I mean,
Or
it's like
is it cyberpunk?
yeah, or yeah, cyberpunk. I mean, there's like these really strong tropes around all of these, and those are fine. But I've really had fun with pretty much all my games, just leaning on contemporary settings and leaning more on movies as an inspiration, because movies have an inherent um, emotional framework in them, right? It's
Mhm.
like what that movie feels like, and so I got lucky that Burgle Bros lines up with like Ocean's 11 and Italian Job, and Fugitive lines up with The Fugitive,
Yeah.
or like Terminator, you know,
Or Catch
and
Me If You Can.
yeah, and it's and what it comes down to is that, first of all, when you watch a movie or whatever, there's a part of your brain that's just like, I think I could do that. Like
Oh
I think
yeah,
I could probably do that. I
I
mean,
can
if
make
with
that
enough
jump.
training or whatever, it's like and part of your brain is like, that whole sympathetic part of your nervous system is just like, yeah, that would be exciting, or oh, that punch looks like it hurt, or whatever. Like, you're always kind of projecting yourself to a certain degree into that situation,
For sure.
or even if subconsciously. Um, and the other part is that like there is underlying emotions, and like the underlying emotion, like Ocean's 11 is just like cleverness. It's just like, no, we got a plan, we got it all figured out. Don't, just wait, it's going to come together. And like that confidence, and just like sidestepping the guard and outwitting them, but then also, something going wrong at the last minute and having to adapt to it. Like that whole vibe of that movie, we were able to hit those notes, right?
Oh
and
yeah, for
and
sure.
then
Like, sorry.
no, so that's Burgle, and then Fugitive is just like, I could get caught at any point, right? This is the turn that I might lose, right? You can lose on the first turn of Fugitive. It's
It's
unfortunate, but you
happened to me.
can. And and so having that tension of like of imminent peril, and this kind of unstoppable force. It's just like, eventually I'm going to run out of cards. They're going to have all the cards. Eventually they're going to have perfect information, and they're going to get me, right? And you working against that clock and just trying to stay just ahead just ahead of them, has that tension of like of peril that lines up again with the movie. Now, with other games, it doesn't necessarily line up. Like, now boarding, I don't know what it is. Paperback Adventures, it's its own beast. That's more of a crunchy one person puzzle. So not every no, so I don't always lean on movies. Um, and Run is a little bit different. Run, you feel like, you've got to zig and zag, and it feels just kind of like parkour, because you're kind of on these rooftops, and you're
Hmm.
jumping between buildings and whatnot. So it kind of has a motif, but it's almost like a cut scene inside of Fugitive. It's like here's like one scene where you're
Yeah,
chasing on the rooftops.
it's like it's if I were to like give it like a narrative thing for like using the metaphor of film, it's like with Fugitive, you're getting snapshots versus like with like Run, it's more of like a landscape shot and you're like playing out the action scene a little
Yeah.
more like
Yeah.
vividly and like from like an overhead view. And also like I love all the colors, especially like I love the blue, the black, and all the different like shades and everything like the minimalist art for Run's
Yeah.
box.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can. Let me see if I can find it here. So, so the picture that's on the Kickstarter of him jumping, oh, he's jumping the gap, and
Yeah, let me see if I can
and
pull it up on my end too.
and, and he's got the helicopter. So, but yeah, it's just that main image. I've got it here.
Let me see.
Yeah. Can I share screen?
Yeah, I think you should be able to. Yeah, it's on the bottom right. It'll say screen
Mhm.
share.
Let's see. Let me get this open.
Let me see.
Here we go.
But no, I think honestly with like my experience with your games like Burgle Bros, Fugitive, you do an excellent job of like capturing like that player driven narrative of like cinematic like tension, like when you're casing the joint for Burgle Bros or like while you're playing the campaign and ramping up the heat and everything like that to make it more difficult. Yeah, that looks
Yeah.
great. Oh, I love it.
Well,
Yeah.
well, so this is this was going to be the artwork for Run,
Hmm.
and then what we decided is like we wanted to differentiate it a little bit, and we just realized that like we want it to like be a sister game to Fugitive, but we didn't want it to, because like people would see this and they might think it's just exactly another Fugitive.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so we went with this like minimalist, like if you watch the credits for The Incredibles,
Hmm.
there's like a particular style of these like little silhouette people that they use in that setting, and we use that as an inspiration. And then again, we've done this in before in like Now Boarding. We would do a thing where basically we use one color, and then we just use different shades of that color to convey the setting, and just it sets a nice tone for it. And so yeah, I mean, we wanted to like make it feel adjacent but not the same thing. So
Yeah, like the box art for Run's like really striking and like I like the minimalist look and yeah, I was talking with my friend Valerie who I was playing Fugitive with the other night. I was like is like this looks like the Incredibles like end credits sequence art and that's what really kind of grabs me because I'm a big fan of Brad Bird and he uses a
oh
lot
yeah,
of that art style in a lot of his movies like Iron Giant, which is another favorite
yeah,
of
yeah,
mine.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I just think not only is it a good looking game, but it definitely scratches the itch of like fast paced, deductive, hidden movement, which I'm a big fan of lately.
Yeah. Did you see
And
the little animated thing we did with
I
the art?
did. I thought it was great. And I'm just like I'd watch a season of this.
Yeah, yeah, we had fun with it. I mean, did you ever watch Netflix's version of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I grew up watching Carmen Sandiego back in the day.
Well, so the new one, if you look at the a picture of it,
Let me see if I can
on
pull it up.
Netflix, it has a very similar style to Ryan Goldsberry's art. Um, and so I really wanted to try to get a license of Carmen Sandiego to
Hmm.
make a version of Fugitive with their characters and stuff they have there, because it's very much, you know, it's very
Oh my God,
dynamic.
yeah, it totally is. I'm looking at it has like a slightly more um not anime art style, but it definitely has a more
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it has like a slightly
It's
more
in the
like
ballpark though. Like you
yeah,
can
it's
see it,
definitely
right?
there. Yeah,
And
I'm
it
looking at
has
it right now. Yeah.
yeah, and it has a lot of the same themes of both Burgle Bros and Fugitive. And so it'd be fun to do a reskin of even both games in kind of this Carmen Sandiego universe. But it's that's kind of above my pay grade. I haven't done really any licensed games.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Like it looks strikingly
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, now I'm just like, I want this. Oh my God, yeah, see, like, check it out.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
would be an awesome, like,
yeah,
oh, that would be so sweet. Yeah, just like a Carmen Sandiego uh reskin of Fugitive
yeah. And it's a good
or
show.
even
It's a,
Run.
it's better than it should be.
Nice. Yeah. Well, it's weird. Like Netflix, like will really toe the line of like we're making something excellent versus like we're making something that's like a dime a dozen.
I know.
It's
They don't really do in between.
I know it's just like for every The Witcher you get a
I know.
thousand Paw Patrol clones or whatever.
Yeah, or like, I mean, and then they do like Sandman and they kill it, and then you're like,
Yeah.
and then they do other stuff, and you're like, was it Red Notice? It's like, okay,
Oh, such
yeah,
a bad, awful movie that
yeah.
so many people have seen.
What do
They're
they
like,
call
yeah,
them? They call them, what do they call them? Mockbusters,
yeah, exactly.
where they're
Where
like,
it's
they're not blockbusters. They're like, it's like the off-brand
yeah, they're not good
blockbuster,
enough
but
to
like,
be in theaters, but they're big enough to be a hit
yeah,
on TV to make 1,000 more of these.
yeah, yeah, and like Gray Man, it was just like, it's okay. Like if it was on TBS in the middle of the afternoon, I'd watch it.
Exactly. If
But
Judge
like,
Judy was like rolling credits and I was like,
yeah,
oh, I'll
yeah,
watch Red Notice.
yeah, like, but as their premiere thing, you're like, I'm really sorry you spent this much money on it, but yeah.
It's
So
one of those things where like I watch that because I'm also pursuing filmmaking
hmm
in the future, whenever that is. I'm like, how did they get a multi-million-dollar movie out of this? And I'm here like just like toiling away on a script that I'm like meticulously writing out, and I'm
yeah.
just like they can slap
Well,
Ryan Reynolds' face on anything and sell it.
I know, but I mean, there's the movies that really have surprised me, like in the last 10 years, like Mad Max Fury Road,
I love
like
that movie so much.
like it shouldn't have been as good as it was. It was good on so many, it was good in so many ways, and it was so different than other movies at the time. The way it was shot and the way it was put together, and it was like a simple story. It wasn't overly complex. All the action is straight on instead of like Michael Bay, like shaky cam all over the
Low angle
place.
shots, everyone's golden and
Yeah,
chiseled like a god.
yeah, and it's just like and they just made all these really straightforward choices, but it felt so fresh. And then like, and this year it was friggin', everything everywhere. Like was
Yeah, that movie was wild. The Daniels are such brilliant directors.
just oh my gosh, they're I mean, it fires on so many levels and speaks to people on so many levels. It's absolutely serious and absolutely silly at the same time. And just I love the fact that it survived and got enough steam to go up against a Marvel movie.
I know, yeah,
Um,
everyone was just like, this is the real
yeah.
multiversal
No,
madness
yeah.
film of the
Don't go
year.
see Doctor Strange. Go see this one. And like, and that was it was like, and it was on. They made that for a really low budget. Like everything everywhere was made on like 30 million or something.
Yeah, it was like a really low budget movie, but honestly, they made it shine. And plus, like
Yeah,
without all that budget, it means like a lot of it can be done in camera.
yeah,
And not only that, like I love like just it really leaned into how weird it was. And this is I know
yeah.
we're totally getting off tangent,
Who cares?
but like because I'm a huge film nerd.
Yeah,
This whole shelf used to be all movies, and it even goes even higher than that. And I just put them all away,
yeah.
and I just have like my wall of stuff. Like I even have like some vintage Bewitched right here.
Oh,
I'm a
speaking of the art, that art style, that bewitched.
yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, Everything Everywhere was just fantastic. And I love their other film, Swiss Army Man.
I need to go see it now because
You
it's
need
a
to go see it. So I don't want to spoil too much of it, but there's a song in the movie called Raccoonatooey or whatever, something like that. And they got like Randy Newman to do the music for it, and it's hilarious. It's so good. But yeah, Mad Max, a lot of that is also shot practically, and it's like a lot of people really got like hurt making that movie, but like it's amazing. Like
yeah,
the like I'm very like whenever my whole thing is like whenever I do eventually hopefully ever make a film, is I want to do so much of it practically, because like if you can believe it and the actors can believe it, then so can the audience.
yeah.
Versus like the Phantom Menace, which was 90% of like a set that they only made tall enough to like go up to Liam
The green
Neeson's eye
screen.
level. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Marvel has the same thing where it's just like,
Mhm.
okay, none of this is real, and I don't know. I mean, I think at a certain point you disconnect because it's so fanciful, right? It's just like I don't know what it would be like to be like in Iron Man armor. Like I have no context of what that would feel like on
Mhm.
like a real level for me. Like it looks cool and amazing and intricate and has all this stuff, but it's not grounded or in a way that I can associate and I can empathize with the what the characters are doing because it's just so over the top.
I love how we're having this conversation. I have like the
Yeah,
Infinity
right.
Gauntlet right behind me
Yeah, right
because I
on.
love the Marvel movies, but I also like on like a film level, like I think they are for the most part. There's some really great films legitimately in the Marvel universe. It's just a lot of it is just kind of bogged down in this like you know just
Mediocre.
this age where we don't use a lot of like practical filmmaking, and it's like we can have 1,000 artists on some other part of the planet animate this rather than bother to make a costume that feels remotely realistic
Yeah.
or like film it in an area that feels real at all.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is they just consumed all of pop culture basically. It's like Marvel just didn't leave any really much air for anybody else. If you think
Mm.
about it, I mean, even Star Wars was getting nudged out by Marvel, the next Marvel, the next Marvel, the next Marvel. But so many of them were just like they were good. It just wasn't great. I mean, occasionally they were great, and it's like not like they didn't have their moments,
Yeah,
but like, but there was so many that were just like, it's like, can I remember the plot of Ant-Man? No,
not
like I
really.
can't. I mean, I
They
can't.
took that from Edgar Wright, which still bothers me because I love Edgar Wright as a
Oh,
director.
yeah,
Ugh, such a
yeah. I
shame.
haven't seen Soho, but I've seen most of his stuff. I
Me
mean, to
neither.
me, Scott Pilgrim and Hot Fuzz are in my like top five, maybe top three. I absolutely love those.
Yeah, I think from his, my favorite of his is like yeah, it's definitely a toss up between Hot Fuzz and Baby Driver. I like Baby Driver a
Uh,
lot.
the
It's
craftsmanship in Baby Driver is there. Like just the execution and everything is so spot on in Baby Driver. But just from like a fun movie that I can watch over and over and over, Scott Pilgrim is so hard to beat.
it's
Like
pound for pound amazing.
I mean, but it's just so rewatchable. And I've raised my kids on it. And so when they did the 10-year anniversary, I took my kids to the theater and we saw it again. But
Oh yeah, the Alamo Draft House. I don't know if you have it where you're at, but like they show like pretty much everything whenever they want. They'll even like show like films in like 35 millimeter. So
wow.
like when I went to go see Joker, they were doing a special viewing of it opening night where they had processed it onto 35 millimeter celluloid so you could watch it and it felt accurate to the time period that it's set in. Like and I
Oh,
was having a
70s kind
blast.
of thing.
And then they'll do like movie parties with like for like right now they have Monty Python going on where they give you like the coconuts and they give you
Oh
like a
yeah,
quote along.
yeah. No, I've heard about some of. I know about the Alamo Draft House. And I know that they do whatever they want. But having like theme stuff like that is almost like gets into like Rocky Horror Picture Show kind of stuff, where it's
Hmm.
like participatory and everything.
I
But
guess before we wrap up film talk and get back to
yeah,
the Backerkit promo,
yeah. Well,
uh, what would you say are your top 5 films that you've seen in the last like couple years? Like
I
just
think
off the dome, no particular
yeah,
order.
yeah. I mean, I think Arrival um
Ooh,
was really up there. I just because it was using sci-fi as a lens for humanity, which hasn't really been done a lot since the heyday of Star Trek,
mm-hmm.
like Next Generation and an original series, like where it's really this interesting lens. Um, Speaking of that, Peel stuff, I loved. I mean, I like all of his films. I just saw Nope, but I mean, still, Get Out is just up there. It's
It's a fantastic commentary on like
yeah.
racism and everything like and cultural appropriation and like a great throwback to like classic like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. Yeah, it just it really clicks in a lot of ways. Um, And then what else was I getting released? I mean, Everything Everywhere. Um, Even I think Jojo Rabbit really just just channeling that like youthful enthusiasm into like the darkest time of humanity is
Mm-hmm.
just is so crazy. But with the new Thor, it's like I'm starting to kind of like worry about Taika Waititi and like it's just like, is he phoning it in? Is like, because he was hitting so hard for so long, and then like with Last Thor, I'm just like, this is kind of just some random stuff happening, and I'm not as invested as I was in previous movies of his. Like it seemed like
Yeah.
the jokes are become more important than the characters in some cases.
Yeah, that's well, I still haven't seen Thor Love and Thunder at the time of recording this. And I might not for a while, but like yeah, I was from what I've heard, like a lot of people are like, this isn't Taika's best. Like I really loved his show, Our Flags Mean Death, where he had his buddy Reese
Oh,
Darby as the main.
yeah.
So it was
I need
really
to see.
funny.
I need to see that. But I mean, his filmography has been so strong up to this point that I was kind of like a little disappointed, but it's fine. And then the other one is like James Gunn.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, original Guardians is fantastic. I loved what he did with Suicide Squad and Peacemaker after that. That like I feel like he's on a total roll. He's found his groove and like ever he wants. Like it's so much fun.
Yeah. So I guess let me rattle off a top five of my own. Let me
Yeah, yeah.
see. Was that five? I don't
I
remember.
don't know, ish. Yeah.
So I think for me, like in the last couple of years, for me was there was this wild it was a remake of the Dario Argento Suspiria. It's a really weird, very dark, very um interesting slow burn of a horror, like an art house horror movie. It has Tilda Swinton playing three different people in it. It's
What?
got yeah, it's you need to make an evening of it because it's like 2.5 to 3 hours long. It's like a ballet academy run by witches, and it's like right along the Berlin Wall, and it's right around the time of right before it's about to collapse, and it's also used as a metaphor essentially. And the score of it is done by Tom York from Radiohead, and he
Oh,
does
geez.
very pretty like
Yeah.
Suspiria opening track that's really good. So that one definitely is up there. David Lowery's The Green Knight. That
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was that was so good. It's visually gorgeous. Dev Patel is awesome as Garwin, and it's like a dark pagan kind of fable style story, and it's based off the poem of the Green Knight, which is like so old that nobody even knows the author. And what else? What else have I been watching? I've been watching so much stuff. It's not a movie, but Sandman. I love the comics,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I love Neil Gaiman, and they knocked it out of the park. And they did such a good job of like updating parts of it to make it, just not to make it more modern, but so much as to just like give it a facelift essentially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I hadn't gotten too far in the comics, but I knew the main pieces of the first series and whatnot. So most of the pieces so far I'm kind of caught up with, but it's been so long since I'd read it, and we're only about halfway through the current series. But like, yeah, I mean, game and stuff in general, I think he's just one of the best storytellers of our age. I mean, just consistent. I mean, I even like his, like Neverwhere, and like with my kids, we read the Graveyard Book, and even like his B list is really strong storytelling. So I'm so glad that he finally got to do Sandman on his terms and not, botch it. Like that's the
Yeah,
thing is like I'm worried about like NK Jemison. She did
yeah,
the Broken Earth trilogy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm really worried about like how that's going to get executed because it's a great one, and it deserves to be a really good series. And then and she teamed up to do a comic. She did a Green Lantern series, uh,
Ooh,
which is a really fun read. It is like as a 1 year a 12 issue cycle. You can get it in. And so she's another like upcoming storyteller that is like doing really interesting things and a lot of commentary on race at the same time. But so that's the Broken Earth trilogy. We'll see. We'll see. I'm a little,
I'm excited.
I mean, like Aragon. I mean, the book and the series is pretty good,
It's a
right?
really
But
good book. I grew up on it a little bit because I was
yeah,
I was a kid when it came out, or a teenager. I don't remember. I don't know how old I
yeah.
am
But it was
anymore.
like, I mean, even the book, it has its moments of like, this kid is brilliant, and the other times it's like, other times you can tell he's a kid. You're like,
Yeah,
like it kind of oscillates, but there's still a lot of brilliance in that series. And then it was just such a, bleh, like
it's such a blech movie.
it's. I mean, I don't know the bigger disappointment between that and like Airbender for like,
Oh no, my brother fell asleep during the movie. It was funny. We went to the midnight premiere. I took off school. My brother took off work, and we watched it. And my brother slept he leaned over. He's like, Ben, I think this movie sucks. So I'm just gonna fall asleep. And then I think I got up and just walked out of the theater and just went to the arcade halfway through the movie, and I sat down and I'm just like, why is it taking him 15 minutes of Tai Chi just to shoot a water ball at somebody? It's ridiculous. And then my brother is like, I'm pretty sure I'll never watch this ever again.
yeah,
It
yeah. It
was
was
so
so
bad.
unfortunate. So unfortunate. I mean,
And
and then
then
another like filmmaker is like, M. Night is like such an enigma because it's like, I mean, Unbreakable and Sixth Sense and like are so good
Split.
and old, Split and old. Like he's got the chops, you know. But then when it's bad, it's bad. Like you're
Yeah,
like,
it's so bad that it's even hard to enjoy it as a so bad it's good movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can't get all the way to ironically liking it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's such a
yeah,
painful
and it's
watch.
unfortunate because like again, like that's the whole thing. Like he could do no wrong for a while, and then after he did wrong for a while, people are like, no, and yeah, so it's interesting.
For every sixth sense, you get the fifth element. No,
Well,
actually, I like the fifth element.
I just like the having a strong auteur, right?
Hmm.
Which is what I try to do in my board games. Like I try to have a voice, and like if you kind of get what I'm interested in and what I like, these are going to resonate with you. And so that's the thing is like I do like to follow these personalities because I feel like there's been a few Marvel movies that have a lot of that direct, that intentional vision of a particular person,
Hmm.
like Thor 3 and and like Guardians and like where they have a strong director, they let them do their thing. But so often a lot of the ones are they just feel super generic. Like, most of the Harry Potters felt generic except for number 3 when they
Yeah,
switched
Alfonso
directors.
Cuarón,
Yeah,
brilliant. He captured it perfectly for me. Like me and my wife, we'll watch that so often, and I'll just
yeah,
be like, and I'll just be like nerding out as like a wannabe director. I'm just like, do you love how it's more like old black magic and not just sparks coming out of a stick? Like it's just haunting little sounds, and then lights dim and things fly around. People aren't bothering to use wands. There's just a guy going like this to make chairs magically set themselves, and it's just like, oh, it's so
yeah,
good. And it's very like there's a shot which feels very The Wolfman whenever Lupin turns into a werewolf, where it has
yeah.
like the slow zoom onto his eyes, and then you see the full moon, and then it's just like it's like Thriller almost. Love
Or
it.
yeah, Werewolf in London, American Werewolf in London.
Yeah. Oh, I need to watch that for Halloween actually.
So I mean, so that's the thing is like that's why I try to follow and now the Daniels from Everything Everywhere are absolutely on my radar for like, okay, watch what these guys are doing. Peel with his whole series of like Twilight Zone stuff. It's just like I really love when they can have a strong vision and then you can like, cheer them on because you want to see them, succeed, but on their own terms. That like
Exactly.
they're doing something that is they're passionate about and they're seeing through. And so that's what I think I like to support and see more in the board game industry. I mean, from me, but also just from other people's like Cole Worley with Root is just such a, you know, it has such a, he has this unique vision of historicity in board games because of his
Mm-hmm.
degree, and he's able to bring in and gamify these things that feel very historical and allegorical with the way
Oh
they're
yeah.
using animals, and whatnot. So I absolutely love what he's doing. I'm cheering him on. I want to see what's next from him. And that type of artistry is what I'm excited about in the industry. But Ryan Lockett, I've been friends with him for a long time, and watching him try to make Sleeping Gods for years, like he was trying to he wanted to make this Skyrim style, choose your own exploring adventure game, and he tried and tried and tried and he finally got it. He nailed it, and now he's refining that formula a bit, and so that's what I think is most exciting in the industry versus like some of these bigger shops where it's just like, oh well, this is shovelware for the latest IP, you know. I mean, Ravensburger and the whole like Force Prison Creative, they've done some great things. Um, they've done some like legitimately good IP games. So IP games are not always bad. They've
Yeah, for
definitely
sure. But they're
there's
just
definitely
they're,
some exceptions.
yeah, there is a point where it feels like somebody will grab onto an IP, not throwing shade any one direction or the other, but like it feels like you grab an IP just to release something, hope it sells because of the IP alone rather than like the quality of the game itself. And that's what I really like you were saying, like with you, with like Cole Worley and the entire team at Leader Games. And like I actually, and speaking of history, going back to that, Oath captures that so well. How
Yeah, yeah,
how like there's like rollover and then like the game kind of remembers and it uses like history as like a means to set up the next game and all the
yeah,
games after, which is really cool. Like because whenever I'm teaching that one, I use narrative as a means to teach how the game works. Like I'm just like think of like all the cards that are going to be on the table later as like everyone who remains after a kingdom has fallen, the people that remember so
yeah.
and so ruler, and then they just migrate to the next city,
Well,
yada
and
yada.
yeah, and a lot of it is like it invites you to interpret, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like here are all the pieces and here are all the players in this play, and I mean, what it's doing what like Game of Thrones does well when it's the early seasons,
Mm-hmm.
is it's telling a sociological story. Like it's telling, here is the whole kingdom, not just the good guys or the hero or whatever. It's like this is the wheel of time rolling forward, and the good guys don't always win, and then you might end up cheering for the bad guys. And like the fact that it feels Game of Thrones felt really different to me because it felt historical in a certain way that it didn't have plot armor. There were real stakes, and you don't know who was going to win. You didn't know how
Yeah,
this was going to play out, and 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 so you have real interest in knowing what happens, and then watching the bad guys win, and you're like, what?
I
What?
know.
They
It's
can't
like
win,
that's whack.
and it was such a subversion. And then it keeps going, and you're like, oh, okay, okay, and you understand that it's bigger than your expectations, and
Which is
that's
really nice. Yeah.
you know
The other thing is like sorry, like
I,
there's also like a delay, so I'm just like accidentally cutting you off, and
no,
I'm
no, it's
so
fine.
sorry. But like, yeah, going back to Game of Thrones, like early on, I'm fidgeting with this.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, going back early on to like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, like especially from like the books, it's like history that nobody wants to bother talking about. How it's the socio-political and economic systems at play are built upon like horrible things that people do to get the ball rolling on that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and like the intricacies of it and who's got whose hands in whom's pockets,
yeah,
and just like the effect of just like how one vibration on this little spider web will reach all the way over to something else in Westeros or whatever. And that part of it was so intriguing early on because it wasn't about like good guys versus bad guys. It wasn't about this, that, or the other. It was more so just watching like a socio-political play
yeah,
out
yeah,
in a grandiose way, which was really fascinating.
yeah. And it
And
was
then
just
there was
this.
the
I
last
mean,
season, which didn't.
I know. And just so many bad things because it's like, I mean, speaking of that, like the one person that was really equipped was Littlefinger,
Mm-hmm.
right? He was the guy that was gonna like chaos as a ladder, and like he felt like the central character in a way that like he embraced the whole thing. Like he's like,
Yeah,
I know these are all moving parts, and I'm gonna manipulate this, and like, and the fact that he is undone, you know, it feels so unsatisfying because it's like you need to feel like, he kind of, for all of his conniving, it's like I wanted to see him have like a genuine success or a coup or something, even if it was temporary. Having him just like come in and like, do a power play and be on the throne or something, even if it was short lived, because it's like that was the one that I felt was like earned because he was playing the game by the rules that the world had set up. And so I kind of wanted to see him succeed. As much as he was evil, I wanted to see him succeed because I felt like he had the virtues that this world was espousing.
exactly. And then like and honestly, like the last season, where Daenerys like burns everyone and everything to the ground. It's like it's a metaphor for what they did for that whole season.
This is what they did with the scripts, and
Just burn it
but
all, guys. We're gonna make a Star Wars movie.
yeah, no, I mean, I heard a good analogy is that once they didn't have the books, right? Once they didn't
Mm-hmm.
have the J Martin's, kind of guidance there, what filmmakers are good at is psychology. They're good at the internal journey of a person, like the arc that you go through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, they're good at the internal motivations of Daenerys and Jon Snow. And so the movie very quickly, or the show became very quickly about a few key people and watching them have these internal transformations,
Mm-hmm.
like they're, and the core conflict even between those two. And you were just kind of watching a psychological movie at that point. A lot of the rest of the context and intricacy and all these other gears spinning of the sociological story got, blurred out, like they just like faded away, and everything got really really simple and really really direct at the end, and not complex and interesting anymore. It was just everything's pretty straightforward. You're just
Yeah,
like,
it's just
okay.
like someone's gonna sit on the throne. Everybody else is gonna be human beef jerky in a
Yeah,
field on
and just
fire.
like, and it doesn't feel like, it felt really flat.
It
You're like
did, yeah.
you were not curious about like the new king and whatnot. You're just kind of like, I guess, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because if it was, written by Martin, it would have been more like, oh man, I want to see the next thing because now these are the people in play, and now these guys are on the downside, and these guys are on the side, and maybe that'll flip later because like you're watching all the Starks, and you're like, when are they going to come back? When are the Starks going to come back? When is this wheel going to turn? And there was no, at the end, you're just like, meh,
Whatever. I mean, at
I
least
just wasn't
Arya's
invested
arc was
anymore.
interest. At least Arya had like an interesting ending as opposed to everyone else in the show. Like
Yeah,
I liked her being an assassin. That
yeah.
whole aspect of it, I could watch a whole show just on that
Oh
alone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
But
mean, that's. I mean, you
yeah,
need to have her and Magneto team up and just kill people.
exactly. I'm about it. I'm for it. Bring it on.
Sorry.
You're
Well,
good.
this is our new film comp podcast. Welcome to,
Exactly.
you know.
Today we're gonna, and then tomorrow we're gonna go with the topic will be Michael Bay question mark Armageddon, but then everything else. Oh my God, Armageddon is a legitimately enjoyable movie,
Yep.
and then there's everything else.
Yeah, I feel bad as like as a Gen Xer that was huge into Transformers and whatnot, and it
Oh,
just felt
same.
like I was being like my nostalgia was being weaponized. Like it, oh, I mean, over and over. But I mean, Ninja Turtles and everything I liked as a kid has now come back in some form. And some of them have been good homages
Hmm.
and good callbacks. But so much of the Michael Bay was just like, I don't know, I don't know. Yes, I could go into my
Well,
opinions
there's
on
definitely
the Bay
another
movie
podcast in
structure
there
and
for next time.
yeah, because he very much has a formula of how he makes a movie. But
Yeah, but to wrap this up real quickly, um, Run is on Backerkit right
yeah,
now. The new delightfully deductive game from Tim Fowers here at Fowers Games, and of course, Fugitive Second Edition is also there. You can donate to get one, or you can put down 50. I think you get both. And also, is the extra map included still, or is that only
You
for the
can get
first
the
48
map,
hours?
or if you get a double pack, you get the maps. So,
Awesome.
And if we figure out some other way to have people, earn them or something, we might give them away as some promos as well. We'll figure it out. But there might be a twist. We're working on something that we might introduce in the middle of the campaign, but we've got some stuff that might turn into, and again, not official, might turn into an expansion, a mini expansion of sorts for Run. Like, we figured out a bunch of new gameplay things to add in, and we're really excited about it. But we got to price it, and we got to test it some more, and it's all like very last minute. But before the end of the campaign, there might be an add-on for some additional Run things on top of the maps and all the other stuff we're going to unlock. But like, Moritz, the designer, I've been pushing him, to think about some different things, and he came up with a whole nother thing that I'm like, oh, this is cool, but we got to price it, see if it makes sense. Maybe we can include it if we can figure out a way to do it economically. We might just include it as a stretch goal if things go well. But we have even more things that aren't announced yet coming, because it's a really cool design space, and so we'll see.
You heard it here, folks. He's whispering sweet maybes in
scoop.
Everyone's ears.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tim, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thank you for watching. Whoever's watching this, if anyone's watching this, I don't know.
It's for us.
I'll put time codes down below, so if you want to skip movie talk and go all the way to the last 2 minutes where we talk about Backerkit, feel free to.
Like you do.
Like all you do. All right, have a good one. Bye.
Okay, all right. Bye.